So hello everyone and welcome back to the last video in this little temporary studio. And today I want to speak about trad wives and once again conservative women complaining that, oh my god, conservative men are so misogynistic, only for conservative men to come back and be like, yeah, we really are. Yeah, we really are, and we only see you as wives and mothers, and that is all you should be. And there is actually nothing wrong with us all saying that's what we want in these relationships. You guys have probably seen this if you watched the Majority Report, because that's where I became aware of this because I don't use Twitter anymore. But I went on Twitter to find these clips. Basically, Megyn Kelly, very famous conservative pundit, had some sort of reputation with liberals for standing up to Trump and those misogynistic comments he made about her, has done basically a complete, I wouldn't call it 180, but she's basically a Trump regime propagandist at this point. If you go onto her Twitter feed, all you will see is just her promoting every little thing the Trump administration has done, including illegal deportations of American citizens because of their supposed anti-Semitism. Obviously, several people sent to like a gulag in El Salvador, and they haven't been accused of any crime, just been swept up in the ICE raids. She's defending stuff like that. So she's firmly pivoted into being like a Trump propagandist, probably for her career. But every now and then, even people who do this, and we've seen this a lot, a little thing will slip out, which will make their conservative, mainly male audience go a bit crazy. And that was her talking about both misogyny in conservative circles and conservative men and dating, and how so many of them only want a baby machine. And of course, to prove her point even further, Matt Walsh responded by saying that, like, yeah, that's what we want. And I'm going to use a fascist argument to justify why that is actually totally okay, and make up some weird thing about how all of human history has essentially been modeled on like 1950s trad wives. Because before we get any further, that's what we have to remember. The trad wife invention over the last couple years isn't about looking at history and thinking, oh my god, wasn't it better when women had that role? Because the role women had in history is not even the role they want for women. So obviously, in many societies across the world, women have for a long time played a prominent role in the labour force. And there's an invention in Western countries that this only happened during World War II, when all the men went away to fight. You can go as far back in human history that women have worked on farms, they have done the actual labour as well. What is different is that sadly in patriarchal societies, women have never had equal rights and often would have to work and raise a family at the same time. Now, the trad wife invention is based on like Betty Draper from Mad Men, that the manly man goes out, he does all the work, and he comes back and his wife has like an apple pie ready for him, and she won't criticize him because her life revolves around making this man's life as easy as possible so he can function in his manly world. And you've had all of these people at the Daily Wire before, I've played this clip a million times, basically say they don't actually do any domestic labour.
It's kind of a trick question because I hate them both equally. But I guess I would say I would rather do the dishes, but I'd prefer if she just did both of them.
Wrong answer.
Michael, to you.
Dishes, it's no question. I'm not sure in our entire marriage if I've ever done a full load of laundry, so I think I have that one.
I like it. All right, Drew?
Well, this is a trick question because I have not done anything around the house for 40 years. I've been a completely useless, but it's clear that if I had to choose, it would have to be dishes because she was just out of town for a month and I actually called her up and said, how do you do laundry? So I think dishes is the only thing I know how to do.
So you can see why a lot of conservative men like that ideal. But sadly, part of the new phenomenon is a lot of conservative men, they want a trad wife, but they also want the trad wife to have a full-time corporate job as well, because they don't want to take on 100% of the financial responsibilities. They just want you to be their slave, essentially, but also pay your share of the rent. So it doesn't even work in terms of this like Mad Men fantasy they've concocted, because they're not going to be earning enough money to cover everything, right? They're not going to be paying the whole mortgage. They're not going to be paying all the bills on their own. So essentially wanting a trad wife is just a fantasy, because they're not even saying to women, be this traditional figure and I will pay for everything. So essentially they're offering nothing and demanding everything. So let's go to Megyn Kelly's comments, which obviously set off a bunch of conservative misogyny. And again, one of the rare times she'll actually say something that doesn't completely go in line with the Trump regime and the conservative movement. So listen to this.
Here's what's happening on the right. Young women, I talk to young conservative women all the time about their lives and their goals and, you know, the things that they want. And what's happening is they can't find men who are maybe more conservative. Usually they're looking for somebody who is religious, you know, like a lot of conservative women tend to be God-loving conservatives. And they can't find a lot of young men who want to marry a working woman now. And this is an actual problem that's coming up on the right. And to me, it's so sad because it's like, how did we get to the point where we're now telling young, conservative, amazing women that they're not attractive if they also work, if they choose to, let's say, do what I'm doing and what you're doing and like get their voice out there. But I'll stick with me just because I think conservatives listening to this will like the thought of another Megyn Kelly voice up and coming. Well, why wouldn't we want that? Why would we take somebody who's talented in this field and really wants to make a difference and have the messaging to her be, you're really not that valuable unless you give it up and go into the home and only have a family and only raise a family. And not only are we sending her that message, but young men are actually believing that. They're actually believing it, especially on the right, because like the trad mom has gotten so popular. And it's like, no, if we do that, we're not going to have any strong conservative or right-leaning women to provide a role model for younger conservative women who, and there's nothing to apologize for here, don't necessarily want to spend all their 20s and their 30s getting married and having kids, or can't. They just weren't able to meet somebody and definitely don't need to be shamed over.
So I believe Megyn Kelly does have children as well and obviously has this prominent hosting career. But she shouldn't be surprised at this, that yes, conservative men don't want a new generation of Megyn Kellys. They would rather Megyn Kelly just not be visible to them and just serve as her role as wife and mother. They do not want women anywhere in public life. That's what conservatives, even herself, might have deluded herself into thinking, that maybe in the media conservative elite, where there are more people who might be gay or women and stuff, that is not representative now of what conservative men, especially people more engaged in politics, actually want. So yeah, they want women just to serve in these domestic roles, and they do want women to serve in roles probably dating back to like the 1940s, that you're either a wife and mother or you're a nurse or a teacher. That's pretty much it. There are feminine roles you can do, but that's about it in terms of your role in the workforce. And people like Megyn Kelly and loads of conservative women obviously shit on feminism all the time, but the only reason you can essentially have the lives you do right now in Western society is because for people who fought for your civil rights, including loads of liberal and left-wing feminists throughout history, because they had to fight against this status quo that fundamentally didn't see them as equal. And conservatives in your movement are the people who still think this and would happily roll back society to what it was in like the early 1900s or whatever, right? And this is only proved by all the replies she got on this underneath this post, because she posted this clip on her Twitter feed. So obviously it's like absolutely not surprising. And I would say it's not unique to America, but it does seem to be a problem in America more, this mindset where people, especially young men, are being influenced by fanatical religion as well as just like generally manosphere misogyny, giving you this toxic blend that so many men are told they just want this slave essentially as their partner. Now, Matt Walsh articulates it in a very, very nice way in that it's really gross, but also gives you a nice window into the mindset of these people and just like how insane they are. And just for every conservative woman who might stumble upon this video, which I don't think would be many, please just realize that you cannot change these men. You cannot suddenly make them go from this to some sort of equal partner, because they don't want an equal partner. And I'm going to talk about what Matt Walsh says, because he says every young man wants a trad wife. And I just reject that so hard. So let's listen to him.
A man is not looking for a business partner. He's not looking for someone to provide for him. He wants a wife. He wants a mother for his future children. He wants a helpmate. He wants a woman, not a man. This is not a new phenomenon. Megyn calls this desire of young men a problem that is coming up on the right. But it's not a problem, and it's not coming up. It's the way human society has been organized since the dawn of civilization. A young man seeking a woman who will have his children and prioritize raising them and keeping a home is doing the same thing that billions of other young men have done since time immemorial. They want what their grandfathers wanted, and what their grandfathers' grandfathers wanted, and what their grandfathers' grandfathers' grandfathers wanted, and on through the ages. The trend, the fad, the new thing, Megyn, is feminism. However you feel about career women who find their value and purpose in the working world, there's no question that they are the ones doing something new. The desire to provide is a noble desire. Even if many of these men will end up splitting the financial load with their wives in some way, still the desire to provide is noble, and it should be encouraged, not shamed. These young men are experiencing a deep, ancient yearning, a yearning to leave home and find a wife and become one flesh, as the scripture says, and then to have children and carry on their bloodline, and then to go back out into the world on a mission to provide for their family, thereby fulfilling their destiny as men. This desire is primal and timeless. It is not a primal, timeless desire for a colleague or a business partner. It is a desire for a wife, a woman he can provide for and fight for and conquer the world for. And in return, he wants a woman who will have his children and raise and love them and prioritize them above anything and show him appreciation and respect and affection. That's what young men want. That's what any man wants. Almost every young man wants this.
Yeah, so you pretty much just listened to Adolf Hitler's argument for why women should only be in the home. But like, this is literally no different from like actual Nazis. I mean, Matt Walsh is an actual Nazi, even though conservatives seem to pretend he isn't. But I do love the argument, firstly, that if your ancestors had it, that makes it right and good and you deserve it too. This whole appeal to history is firstly wrong, but also is just straight out of the fascist textbook. Like, I'm going to invent some historical scenario that your grandfather had, and this is just the thing we should all strive for and the thing we all deserve. But also, I find it so insane that he thinks most young men want this. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I was 17 and started dating my current girlfriend, none of this crossed my mind. Like, firstly, if you're a young man, that stuff shouldn't even be in your head. If you are under 30 years old, you should not be seeking a relationship to build some sort of traditional lifestyle with a woman who will be your bangmaid, essentially, right? That is just insane. You should be looking for a life partner. And of course, yeah, that can often come with raising a family. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have children and raise a family. And as you get older, that becomes increasingly important, especially if you're dating, maybe over 30 and stuff. You need to have an honest conversation up front about what you want. But when you are a young man, you should not be thinking about these things. And you shouldn't be caring about these things as some sort of primary thing you're looking for in women. But also, most young men who are watching this, like there's probably like a fair amount of you, think about what you want in a relationship, right? So I'm with my girlfriend and we've been together since we're 17. And thankfully, we've obviously grown to now we're both nearly 30. And we've kept like these similar values. And we're both like really ambitious. We want to do things with our lives. We're both like very creative. And we both have our like creative outlets. And we want to achieve this stuff. So the thing that we enjoy about being together is that we both like push each other. We both share this love of like different kinds of like art, especially things like movies, and we bond over that. And that's what you want out of a life partner, someone that you can enjoy life together with. Obviously, I don't know how high a percentage this would be. It'd be impossible to poll. But wouldn't you want someone who's your equal? Wouldn't you want someone who's your like intellectual equal? Wouldn't you want someone who has the same morals as you? Wouldn't you want someone who's ambitious in the way that you are? Wouldn't you want someone who's very compatible with you outside of raising a family? And that's another thing as well. Even if you do want, like say like I really wanted a family and I really wanted children, why would it change any of the things I've just said? I would want that and realize, okay, that is also going to be my responsibility. As 50% of this relationship, I'm going to have to also pull my weight in this relationship if we do have a family and children and stuff. But what is wrong with that? Like, why is that feminism dividing this equally and making sure that we can both work together at our life goals, rather than the man being allowed to have all the ambition, being allowed to be creative, being allowed to have a whole life where he doesn't have to worry about anyone else but himself, because his wife is his maid who takes care of all his other responsibilities. So just like with a Don Draper type in Mad Men, he doesn't really have any responsibilities to his children in the early seasons because his wife Betty takes care of it. So he goes out to work every day, he does what he wants, he's the man at work, he earns all this money, he is the breadwinner, and also he's doing something he enjoys, and he gets to just stay out however he wants to say, I'm at work, I'm working, and he's not accountable to anyone. So he just gets to live his life like he is a single person because his partner takes care of all the actual responsibility in the relationship. So conservative men can want that all you want, but how are you going to sell that to women? How are you going to sell it to women that, yeah, everything you want out of life, you don't get to have that anymore, even though it's totally possible. And even with Megyn Kelly's case as well, you can have children, you can have the family, and you can pursue your ambitions. That's all possible now, thanks to things like feminism. Conservative men just want to like roll back the clock where it's like, no, you will be my slave, and everything in your life will just revolve around being a mother. That's the thing with conservatism, especially in regards to women. They want to completely strip women of their identity and boil it down to like a few different things that they can't break out from, where men get to be whatever they want. So essentially the same, we just want the world to be for men, and the men have no limits. They can do everything. They can have all these ambitions, they can have all these hobbies, they can have all this time, because the only responsibility they have is financial. And everything else in terms of the women's role is to serve in his pursuit of that finances, and that is his part of the relationship. No emotional responsibility to the wife or their children, just you're the breadwinner, and everything else in the family is to facilitate that. And again, no responsibility, no accountability, and just shows you that fundamentally these men just don't see women as equal. Because if you saw a woman as equal, would you really say up front to a woman, I want you to be this? I don't care what you want. I want you to be this, and I want to mold you in this for me. I want to groom you in this for me, just so you can act as what I want you to be. And that's why conservative women are so annoying, like Megyn Kelly. You're literally helping this ideology flourish. So people actually in positions of power have this ideology and are rolling back women's rights that you're enjoying and taking for granted. And one day, people coming after you, you're saying the next Megyn Kelly isn't going to exist because they're not going to have the benefits that you had thanks to people like liberal feminists and leftist feminists paving the way for them. They're going to have a world designed by people like Matt Walsh. And obviously we see things like The Handmaid's Tale, which is like the extreme version of this. But ideologically, that's what people like Matt Walsh want. And yes, if you go into the comments of all of his stuff, it's loads of guys agreeing with him as well. So fundamentally, there's two things here for conservative men and women. For conservative men, basically, what people like Matt Walsh are selling you is a pure fantasy. Most women, unless heavily indoctrinated in maybe conservative Christianity, they're not going to go along with it, even if they are conservatives, because what you're fundamentally asking them to do is give up all their freedom to just live under your rule, right? So most people won't go along with that. So conservative men realise you're being lied to about this, and realise also this ideology that Matt Walsh is selling is actually making you feel terrible about yourself, because he's given you this fascist ideal of masculinity to try and live up to. And if you don't live up to it, which it's very likely you're not going to, because again, women aren't going to go along with that, then how are you going to feel about yourself? I'm not someone who's big on like gender roles and gender norms. So I'm not going to say being a man is actually being this, but just realize this is an enforced gender norm from your grandparents' era, and they're trying to bring it back. And it's not going to make you happy. It's actually going to make you feel even worse about yourself, because we already have a problem with this enforced masculinity in our society that makes men feel so shitty about themselves if we don't live up to these expectations. And if you listen to shit like this, you're just going to feel even more terrible about yourself. But with conservative women especially, you just have to wake up and realize that it doesn't matter really what you feel about certain issues. And even if you think you're aligned with conservatives generally on certain principles, these people do not see you as equal. And if you in any way enjoy the benefits of equality that has been fought for so hard by different people over generations, you have to realize that this isn't the side you want to support or vote for. And people like Megyn Kelly, they'll be okay because they're rich, and it won't affect them because they're rich. you're probably not rich. So when people like Matt Walsh, and there are people like Matt Walsh in the government right now, are successful in rolling back women's rights even more, you'll be the one suffering. So you just have to keep that all in mind. So anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.